Hey everybody, welcome back to Byte Club, the monthly indie game club podcast. I'm your host, Nevin.
And I'm your other host, Jesse.
And this month, we are talking about Frictional Games' Penumbra Overture, and probably some of their other games too. And here, for you, is a usual bit about spoilers. There's gonna be them. The first half of the podcast is gonna be all non-spoilers, and the second half is gonna be chock full of them. Also, like I said, we are most likely gonna talk about the other games by Frictional throughout this episode to some extent. We're gonna keep any spoilers about those to the latter half, and probably let you know when we're gonna spoil a thing, so you can skip a little bit. And I think the only announcement that we have is that I really need a nap. It's an official announcement going on the docket.
Yeah, I'm joining you on the need a nap.
It's just been such an exhausting few days.
Yeah, a few weeks really for me, but I feel you on that.
Yeah, a few. That's fair.
A few years, really, for being honest, for both of us.
Since birth. Exhausting since birth.
Yeah.
All right. Like I said last episode, Penumbra is one of my favorites from the very weird 2007-ish era of horror games. From the team behind Amnesia: The Dark Descent, Penumbra Overture is a first-person survival horror game with an emphasis on survival and problem-solving instead of jump scares and gore freaks. I changed that a little bit from last time because I said it wasn't about violence, but there's definitely some violence that you can do in at least the first Penumbra, and I'm excited to talk about that. So without further ado, let's get the fuck into it. Okay, so Penumbra. Have you played this game before, Jesse?
No, this was my first time playing Penumbra Overture and Black Plague, which we played for this as well.
Did you play Requiem too?
I didn't get a chance to play the DLC for Black Plague, but I did play a bit of Soma. So.
That's right, they did Soma as well.
Yeah.
Have you ever played Amnesia?
Yes, that one I have played. I played that when it was popular, and I didn't like it. That's my take on that.
Full stop. Did you play Machine for Pigs?
No, that's the only one that I haven't put any time into. I own it.
That's fair.
But I haven't played it. And that's from the Chinese room, isn't it? That's not technically just Frictional?
Yeah, I think it was published by Frictional. I don't know the exact relationship, but yeah, the Chinese room were the big gas on that.
Right, and I have to imagine that would still be a quality experience given the Chinese room's back catalog and like how well that ties together with Frictional games up to that point with Penumbra, Overture, and Black Plague. So yeah, and Amnesia obviously. So I imagine that's still a quality one, but no, I haven't played it myself. So
okay, that's fair. My experience with these games is a lot of Jam actually got super into Penumbra a little after we first started dating, I think. It came out in 2007. Yeah, a little after we started dating, she started playing Penumbra, and I pretty much like sat with her through all of the games.
Oh, okay.
So that was my sort of initial experience. I hadn't actually played them myself. And playing them's a very different experience, especially when you know some of the mechanical tricks that you can do in this game, because there is some jank that you can do in certain parts, and it really changes the experience of the game as a whole, I feel.
Right.
It's also aged in a weird way, I think. We talked about this a little bit before, but I'm pretty sure this is one of the first games to have this sort of fully diegetic, like, interaction method, or mostly fully diegetic. Like, your hand has space in the world, and it's the mouse, and you have to click and drag and move things around. And that carries over into its combat, too.
Mm-hmm. Especially for, I guess kind of exclusively for Penumbra Overture. Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely an interaction system that makes for really, in this sort of thing, really immersive interactions, obviously. Like opening doors, manipulating switches, pulling levers, pressing buttons. It all feels really tactile. And it feels really like, instead of in a regular horror game like, say, Alien Isolation, or is Manhunt a horror game? Not really. Alone in the Dark.
I would consider Manhunt a horror game. It's
I
just
guess
a
it depends.
different kind.
Yeah, different kind of horror.
That's more like Grindhouse.
Yeah. Well, so games that are similar to Penumbra, and that you're sort of trying to avoid a particular source of murder, death, scary times. When you're trying to dodge those sorts of things, when you have that tactile feedback that you don't have in other games like that, it makes each interaction feel a lot more important and a lot more tense, because there is time between you opening a door, as opposed to Alien Isolation where you just kind of click the button and it opens, right? Or you click E and you're instantly in the locker, where in this you have to move stuff. Like if a monster's coming, it's not a situation of there's going to be a cutscene that plays and you pull a locker to cover it like it's Resident Evil 7, or you have the flamethrower and you point it and you shoot it at the alien in Alien Isolation. This is a situation of something's chasing you. Now you have to pull tables and boxes and everything to block the door. How well does it work? Who's to say? But your immediate reaction is to do it. And I think that's really cool. Yeah, I like that, the way that the system, the mechanic of doing that, how that feels and how that changes the way that you play fundamentally in a horror game. It's really cool. It works really well.
It really makes me wish that mice had like vibration.
Like haptic feedback.
Like haptic
for sure.
feedback. It'd be
so that's
so
really
cool.
interesting, actually. It's something I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
I want to talk more about this later, but I played Penumbra Overture on my TV using the Steam controller. And the Steam controller has haptic feedback, right? So I had set up Rumble. Not that there was like Rumble that's attached to it, but just when there's screen shake, there's like an application you can use that attaches the screen shake to it. And you can like modify the haptic feedback for drag when you're using the right thumb pad, I guess. So when you're pulling objects, you can like kind of feel it a little bit. And like that was really cool. I think the experience of that was really interesting, in that the tactility, is that a word?
It is now.
Of the game came through in the controls, which was really just like something you can only get, I think, from the Steam controller. Obviously, there aren't like a ton of mice that I'm aware of that have any vibration in them, period. So having that sort of thing really made me appreciate that element of Penumbra a lot more, I think.
That's actually really cool, because like Penumbra is not controller compatible. It does not exist on consoles. It is a PC only experience.
Yeah.
And the fact that you found a way to that alone is super, super cool to me. Like the fact that you were able to do that. And I'm glad to hear that feedback in that way did notably change the experience. Did you play with it on mouse at all, or were you fully on the pad?
So I didn't play Overture on mouse and keyboard at all, but I did play Black Plague on mouse and keyboard. And again, that's something I want to get into a little later. I think we'll bring it up. If we don't, I'll make it happen. But it was definitely a different experience. For different reasons, I enjoyed it just as much as I did playing with the Steam controller, but just for different reasons. Actually, I think I liked the second one more, and that's for reasons that has less to do with the way that I played and more than just I think Black Plague's a better game.
Yes.
But yeah, I think Overture definitely benefited from me having that method of input, even though it was at the start a lot of fiddling and a lot of like me not knowing what I was trying to do, how to do certain things with that interface. But I still, I enjoyed it. It was fun as things went on. I found myself being less frustrated and less like these puzzles suck as time went on, and yeah, it got better.
There's definitely a weird. I want to talk about like the path of the game itself, and by extension frictional, for a second, because like there's definitely an arc of quality within, I feel, especially Black Plague itself. Like from the start to the end, there's kind of this weird, you can see the game getting better as it goes on. And it's to me, it's beyond just things like the production quality of the game, and it's more like the actual design aspects of the game seem to improve as you get further in. And I don't know if that's just getting used to the logic that the game expects, or it actually improving as the studio gains more experience throughout the project. And each game after that Frictional does, like, just gets better and better. Did you have that same sort of feeling?
Yeah, so I think what you were saying about like whether or not it's the developers getting better or you getting used to the mechanics and what the game expects of you, I think it's kind of both. With Black Plague, I was solving puzzles a lot faster because I knew what I was supposed to try to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I especially noticed it when I was playing Soma a little earlier before we recorded this and the first time I played it. The puzzles, the way you're supposed to approach them, is a lot more straightforward in that game. But
In Soma?
Yeah, in Soma, but it's also like I felt as though I knew stuff that playing Black Plague and playing Overture, I was like, what am I supposed to do here? And then I did it, and then in Soma, a similar puzzle came up, and I was like, oh, I gotta do this, right? And then I did it, and I was like, oh, hell yeah, okay. Like, there's like a window that's slightly shattered, and there's no way to get out of the room, so you have to throw something at it with the physics-based, interactions.
Yep.
That hit the window, broke open. I jumped out. I was like, hell yeah, I've done this before. I know puzzles. Like, that wouldn't have been my immediate instinct, like it wasn't in Overture when that sort of thing came up. I don't think it was Glass, but there was a similar situation where you had to... No, it was Black Plague. Yeah, you had to hit something with a rock to make it open. And I never would have guessed that. But, yeah, I think it's definitely a combination of the two things in that the developers figured out what people did and didn't like about their previous games and sort of ramped that up. They made that stuff more clear, more evident, and probably a little more streamlined. Like, the shattered window is a lot more obvious than having to right-click an object and then the game, like, sort of subtly hints that you can hit it with something, which is a problem that I think Overture and Black Plague had. So it's good to see that, like, as time has gone on, they've gotten a lot better with that. I mean, obviously Amnesia was a lot more approachable for people compared to Black Plague and Overture.
I want to talk about the combat itself.
Right.
I think it's hilarious for a number of reasons that they just fucking took that shit out in Black Plague. They said, nope, fuck this.
Yeah.
So for those unfamiliar, in Penumbra Overture, you find a number of melee weapons that you can use to attack things. They're like these mangy dogs that are running around, and they're pretty much the only they're the most common active threat. There are also like some big ass spiders. That's not a spoiler, I don't think.
Yeah.
But you click and drag to a side and then quickly swipe the mouse while holding down the button to do an attack. Like, it's as to emulate moving your arm back and forth, and it's slow and it's clumsy and you can fuck it up really easily. In the combat, it's really hard to kill any of these things that are coming at you. They can attack faster than you. They have more health than you. And I think that including combat in this way, it reminds me of, like, the shitty, janky combat of, like, Silent Hill, where you've got these tank controls and it puts you at a disadvantage to engage in combat.
Yeah.
But if you figure out a couple of things that I'm not going to mention right now, you can cheapen the combat in a way that makes it super, super easy. And you can just take out these enemies without any real risk to yourself.
Yeah.
And I tried it both ways. I tried it the janky, cheaty way, and I tried it a couple times the what I assume is intended way, if any combat is actually intended. Like, that's what's so weird about this combat is you can do it, but I don't think you're meant to.
Yeah.
And then they just fucking took that shit right out. As soon as you start Black Plague, there are no weapons in, I think, any of Frictional's games since then.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, nothing in Soma. I don't remember anything in Amnesia, so yeah, definitely no combat mechanics. And that's always kind of been the fundamental question of making a horror game is do you give the player a method with which to undo the threat, or do you let them, run, and that's all they can do is run, Even in Black Plague, despite the fact that there is no combat in that, they still have to wrestle with the fact that players, because, that question of, do you have combat or do you not, is really more a question of, like, what do the players have as options to mitigate mistakes? And by choosing to not have combat in Black Plague, a lot of it's running around. Like, a lot of it is just running past enemies or trying to, like, jump up on something so they can't reach you. And that's fine, I don't think that's a bad thing. But it is just a different way of approaching the same problem, in a way that feels less like you have less control. which is good. That makes for more scary moments, I think.
I'll talk about this more in the spoilers section, but in Overture and in Black Plague, they try to use enemies as a pressure puzzle, right? Because 90% of the time you're in a scary area.
More so they do that in Black Plague, I feel like.
More
in Overture,
so,
it's a lot
yes.
of just like annoying things between you and wherever you want to be.
In Overture, it is a forced stealth section.
Yeah.
That's kind of what they're intended as. In Black Plague, it's more like in Amnesia, where there are moments of a very active threat and you have to work around it or die.
Yeah.
Also, to the point of combat, in Black Plague, you have the option of picking up like things in the environment and you can throw it at enemies to sort of stun them. And then in Requiem, there are no enemies. It is a full-on scary puzzle game. And then in Amnesia, I don't think you can even throw stuff at the bad guys. I think that they are a when they get you kind of thing, if I'm remembering that correctly.
I don't remember that well either, but yeah, that sounds like that would be
Amnesia's a big old blur for me.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that in Soma you cannot do anything.
Yeah, no.
It is hide or die.
Yeah, which, I think is good so far from where I am. But yeah, definitely.
I really, really like Soma. I honestly think Soma is probably the strongest game that Frictional has ever done.
No question.
It is so fucking good.
Yeah.
And terrifying. Oh,
yeah,
boy,
scary.
does that game scare
actually the first one
shit
that I
out
played
of
of theirs that I'm like, oh shit, this is spooky.
So, Overture didn't spook you? Black Plague didn't spook you?
No, and no. I didn't find Overture scary except for like one moment, which I don't want to spoil. But
of course,
good spooky times. One time over like a 4 or 5 hour long game. Not a great track record for me.
It definitely. I'm trying to think of the word for it. It's more of like a psychological game. It's more of.
I guess. I mean, I didn't even find it like that.
Atmospheric game.
But I didn't even find that scary. I didn't find the atmosphere all that scary.
Oh, I don't mean horror. When you don't understand how the game works, I feel it can be very scary. But once you get it, once it clicks and you understand what you can and can't do and how to work around this old AI, it's no longer scary and it's more just an interesting atmospheric experience puzzle game.
Mm-hmm.
When it came out, there wasn't a game doing horror like this.
Yeah.
And I also think that the character, there's a special good boy in Overture that I think is really what makes the game as good as I feel it is. I fucking adore him.
Yeah.
And then in I feel like they kind of realized that the character and the writing that they were able to do is what really made their game sing, and they brought that into Black Plague. And they even brought it into Requiem in a really, really cool way.
Oh, neat.
I have some feelings about Requiem that we will get into. And then they kind of dropped that for Amnesia. Like there's a cool antagonist in Amnesia, but I don't feel like he's as present. And in Soma, well, there's some shit about Soma too that I can't talk about. But yeah, I feel like that's sort of the path of spooky for these games.
Is less, less actually being scary and more just atmospherically tense, and that's
yes.
Okay.
I feel like it's more I feel like it's a game about tension and about the characters in your radio.
Yeah, I mean, for horror games, I would definitely not rank these in the anywhere.
Damn. All right.
I don't find them particularly scary or even really all that tense. Like I said, probably one moment in each game, but I mean, I can remember scarier moments in Mad Max, the open world game from like 2016 or 15 or whatever. Like I thought that had scarier moments in it, legitimately, that I remember more vividly, despite how long ago I played that compared to Overture and Black Plague.
What?
Yeah, not even kind of scary. So like horror is obviously probably more subjective than comedy, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
What you find scary is really going to come down to who you are and what you've experienced already.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't play a ton of horror games on purpose, but I find that more often than not on purpose. I just do them for podcasts, and I
get one a year.
Yeah, that's it. That's all. So yeah, obviously that's the situation with horror, for film, for games, for whatever. But I feel like for games, unlike for film, the thing, and obviously tell me if I'm being, if I sound like a dumb bum. I don't watch a ton of horror movies, but with games, like you were saying, a lot of it is how well can you interact with the AI, because that's kind of what it comes down to. The scary parts of the game are less about what you're experiencing and the atmosphere, because that can be like tense, but that tension is only wrought by the existence of something that can stop you. That you can't have tension without a threat, I feel like. If it's just tense, like, okay, Gone Home is a really good example.
Yes.
Yeah, like that game's really tense, but once you find out there's no threat, the tension kind of bleeds away, and you start being, just start being interested in what's going on in the house and what there is to learn.
I think that that's a really interesting, unique experience for that game too. Like I feel like that game would not at all be the same if you were aware from the start that there was no threat.
Yeah. Like, it's scary because when you get home, no one's there and you're trying to figure it out and everything. And yeah, that's really interesting. But that goes with what I'm saying of like, once you know there is no threat, the tension disappears. And what you were saying with the dogs, right?
Once you can permanently mitigate that threat,
or even temporarily, and you've learned it, like, then you stop being scared and the tension stops being there in the world. Like, I remember playing Alien Isolation, and one of my biggest problems with it was the flamethrower. Like, because I've played so many games, I stopped being afraid of the alien once I learned how the systems worked, and I just like started piecing together how I understand games and how I play them and everything, and things I've learned from previous ones that clearly that game was inspired by. The flamethrower, you only have to click it once. You don't have to drag it out. As soon as a little bit of flame comes out, the alien runs away. Super easy to conserve your fuel that way, and it's a lot, it's just a lot easier to get away. As long as you know where the thing's coming from, you shoot the fire in its direction, you're good to go. And, this game had the same sort of problem. Overture specifically had the same sort of problem. So the tension went away as soon as I learned what I had to do to not have a threat. So a lot of the game's fear comes from, one, your lack of knowledge of games, but also, and I think more importantly, and something I really want to talk about, is your ability to immerse yourself. Horror games, more than action games, more than fighting games, more than strategy games or whatever, rely on the player's ability to put themselves into a situation where they can be scared. Literally at the start of Penumbra Overture, the developers obviously through the game, are telling you to play the game with headphones and make sure it's dark as shit. To play the game properly, from their perspective, you need to create an environment where you get scared. Exactly. Yeah. Create an environment for yourself where you're getting scared. And that, I think that's just like, not a bad thing. It's something you have to do because that's horror. It's like watching Halloween in the daytime. It's not going to be as scary.
Really, the only place that I can think that works is in horror. Like, there's you don't get messages before an action game saying, "Hey, do a bunch of sit-ups." And I think that it's something that is unique to horror in general. Like, they don't tell you to smoke some laughing gas before a comedy movie. They don't. That's terrible.
No, I love smoking laughing gas. Classic.
Let me roll up a laughing gas blunt real quick.
Hell yeah, laughing gas, Jay. Let me smoke up, eh?
Hello, Mr. Dealers. Can I get one laughing gas, please?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. There's not a lot of setup for other things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like I sit down to play COD. It's not like learn how to use a gun before you play this.
But at the same time, right? While that's true, while there aren't like prerequisites to other genres, I feel like, before you can play them in a way that the developers or that fans of the genre would tell you need to in order to experience it properly. People do have their own rituals for playing games. I know a lot of people who play The Sims, and before they play it, they'll have their tea, they'll have some little biscuits, they'll put on whatever music they like listening to, or people who play City Skylines, right? They have stuff that they'll do beforehand. Maybe they'll watch a civic engineering video or something. Like, people have their rituals. Classic civil engineering videos.
Ah, yes, I would love to play my Forex strategy game, but before I do, where is the 2010 census?
I need to read over who voted for Barack Obama before I play
I need a
Europa
full list.
Universalis 4. I need to. It's just I have to. So so yeah, I mean, a lot of people have that sort of thing, but yeah, this is one that's sort of imposed on the genre, which I think is really interesting, very unique to horror, in that there's not a lot of other genres that, yeah, like you were saying, and like, that I had mentioned briefly, that like there's no other sort of thing you can play that requires you to have the lights off, or do sit-ups,
Yes.
or smoke a laughing gas bong, take a hit from the Joker pipe. That's just how it goes.
I think it's especially interesting that for horror, it is a constant. It doesn't change for horror. If you want to get scared, turn the lights off, wear headphones.
Yeah. And I mean, I think of the horror games, and this is something I wanted to mention as well. With Overture, I played that on my television, and for Black Plague, I played that on the computer. And like I said, there are different experiences that I enjoyed for different reasons. The tactility coming from the controller when I was playing with the Steam controller on my TV obviously added to my ability to feel certain things, to feel the weight of certain actions, and to feel the tension as things went on, as the game got further in and I stopped being frustrated learning how the controls worked. That the sort of puzzle solving and everything, it felt better, but the sound was obviously dampened. And despite playing sometimes at nighttime before I went to bed after work, I was still like very unable to sort of attach myself to the experience, to really feel the tension in the game, because I had the distance from it, right? It was a small little window. It was always a reminder that because of the size of the screen, despite the blackness of the room, I was only playing a video game. I couldn't get visually immersed in it in the way that I think you have to with a computer. Like when you're sitting, who's really sitting that far away? Like 3 feet away from a screen. It's different from
hunched over
like I am right
like
now.
a fucking gremlin.
Sitting there with your hands. WASD, where my fingers go. When that's how you play the game, it's different.
If you're not smelling your keyboard while you're playing a game, are you doing it right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like when you're not playing it that way, you lose a lot of the experience, which, again, very cool that that's a sort of thing that you have to work on when you're making a horror game, is you have to consider the space with which the player is playing. With Penumbra Overture and with Black Plague, they were obviously, like you said, exclusively designed for PC. They did not come out on consoles, and they probably never will. And that helps a lot with developing the game. When you make a game like Soma, which is on console, that game I think is still scary, but I played it on PC, and I played it, 3 feet away from my computer, hunched over like a gremlin. Where if you played it on PS4, I bet you'd have a very different experience. Even if you have the headphones on, you're still far enough away from the screen that as long as you've played enough games to remember what playing a game feels like, you'll remember that, like, oh, I'm looking at my TV, even if the room's really dark, if you're far enough away, you're always reminded that you're looking at a screen. You're never able to get that into it, I think, anyways.
We keep saying as long as you are familiar enough to play games, and if you are unfamiliar with games, horror works completely differently from a game.
Totally, yeah.
Because then there's a whole new avenue of forgetting what buttons do what, right? If this were Raz's wife's first game...
Oh!
By the way, pretty solid video from Raz about, like, new game players experiencing games. It's pretty good. But, like, if this were the first game that somebody played, it's a completely different experience for a whole bunch of reasons. Like, unless they're familiar with the horror genre in general, they won't know to, like, turn off the lights and wear headphones. And when they're playing in a moment of panic, they're gonna forget how things work, causing more panic. And I think that that's incredibly interesting too. That particular thing, like panicking and forgetting how certain buttons work, that's a constant across genres for new players. And I think that it's got an extra avenue in the horror genre, like to spook people out. And I think that that's really cool.
Yeah,
and
no, I agree.
Changes a lot of things.
I mean, I think the language of the medium and how well you understand it really does help in making something scary or something exciting. I think in a different way. But yeah, like when you watch a movie like I'm trying to think of a bad horror movie. Any of the new ones, with the guy with the kids. You know, Darth
I'm not
Maul's
gonna
in the
s-
first one.
I'm not gonna save you.
You know, come on, Darth Maul's in the first one. What it's the one that Annabelle's
Insidious.
based. Thank you. If you watch any of the Insidious movies and like you hear the high string on the violin and it's going and it's rising, you know there's gonna be a jump scare. It's either gonna be a fake out jump scare where it's like nothing actually scary, or it's gonna be an actual jump scare. Either way, you know a scare.
Or it's gonna be a fake out jump scare and then scare you a couple seconds later.
Right. And I think that's why you see this sort of ebb and flow, the rise and fall of horror as a hot commodity within the film industry. Like every 10 years, there's like a gap where there aren't a ton of horror movies, and then there's a bunch of horror movies all at once.
Or there's one incredible horror movie.
Yeah. You know,
Cough,
you
cough,
get your...
Midsummer, cough, cough.
Right. But those movies, you know, Midsummer and what was the previous one from...
Hereditary.
Hereditary, which was fantastic.
They do horror differently. That's what makes them so good. I think that I think beyond the language of the medium, it comes down to the language of the genre. Horror is it's really easy to learn to read horror.
Certainly.
Especially when you are reading the bulk of mainstream horror. Mainstream, like you said, it's got an ebb and flow. It has tells, and it cheapens the genre. I'm just gonna say it. The fact that horror is so predictable cheapens it, but there are many, many things that are good in spite of that. And I almost feel like, for me, as a horror enthusiast, being so familiar with the language of the genre makes it more enjoyable, I think.
Right.
Because I can get past the... Eventually you get past looking for the tells, and you start to look at what the stuff actually means. And that's something that you can really only do once you understand how the genre talks to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's definitely true for sure. A lot of what you can do with horror as a person that makes horror, right? As a person that goes out of their way to tell the stories that the people who work at Frictional Games tell. A lot of it is what can you tell with the language of the genre, you know? And like you mentioned with Midsummer and Hereditary, obviously, and The Babadook is another good one, I think, like that.
I was going to mention Babadook, yeah. Fuck,
those
that movie's
films,
good.
They tell the same sort of story, quote unquote, in the horror aspect of like how do you scare somebody, but they do it in different ways that feel really original, just because they're not telling it in the same way as the other films. You know, there have been 7 Paranormal Activity movies.
Yep,
Like,
they're all the same movie.
yeah.
Why can't every horror movie just be Blair Witch 2?
Why can't every horror movie just be an action movie starring a Marvel superhero instead? Why not that?
I would actually love if Marvel did a horror movie.
Oh, you're gonna love the
there.
next Doctor Strange, then. That's what it is.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. Anyways, Penumbra Overture is a video game.
It's all right. Before we jump into spoilers, good video game or aged and bad now video game? Or
I guess
middle?
for its time, I don't know. 2007 had other good horror games, didn't it?
I think
Wasn't the first Condemned 2007?
leave the typing and I'm looking it up.
Sure.
2005.
Yeah, so before this game came out, there were better horror games.
I don't know if I would call Condemned a better horror game.
I would say it's scarier, or at least okay. So this
I
comes down
don't
again
know.
to
Here we
this,
hear.
this comes down again to your understanding of the language. So when I played that, I was what? 15?
Yeah, exactly. You were
14?
much younger when you played that.
Yeah.
I played Condemned 2 years ago for the first time.
Right, and so that's
It
why
didn't
you're going to
scare
have a
me at
different
all,
perspective
yeah.
on it, and why someone who played Penumbra Overture when that came out is going to say Penumbra Overture is probably scarier than Alien Isolation. You know, again, yeah, it's just your perspective and your amount of understanding of the genre and games in general. So yeah, I would say Condemned is scarier. You played it 2 years ago, way after the fact, and you
After
know,
being
would not find it scary.
much more familiar with the genre too.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that if I had played
I
Condemned
think
when it came
structurally,
out-
though, if we ignore the scary factor, how scary is it? I don't care. I think Penumbra Overture isn't even that good of a puzzle game. I think that Condemned is better. Like,
Oh God, you wound me.
I'm sorry, but I just did not find the puzzles all that interesting in Overture. There were like 2 or 3 where I was like, that's kind of neat. But, you know, I can only do so many. Okay, here's another maze-like region with like 6 rooms, and each room has a different piece that you need. And if you miss a piece, you better fucking go find that piece and then come back and do the one big puzzle again.
Jam and I were talking about this. Yeah, the formulaic nature of this game. You're in a semi-open area, and you've got to gather things, and then you go through a linear segment, and then you're in another semi-open area. Like, that's how the game works.
Yep.
That's its flow. And I think it's okay. I think I agree with you. Like, I feel like the formulaic nature of the game ruins its structure.
Yeah.
Like, it ruins... It's too obvious.
Yeah.
But again...
In the same way that, you know, we would say with horror, when you do enough of that, it gets really fucking tired and not scary.
Yep.
This has the same thing of like, you know, the puzzles were really good one time, guys. Like, I get it. I have to get 3 different items from 4 different rooms. Then there's a little jump scare bit I gotta do, and then I solve a puzzle. And then we go to the next maze, and it's like, yay. Like, it wasn't bad. I just didn't enjoy it all that much. Black Plague was much better in terms of both puzzles and general like enjoyability in the gameplay, for sure.
I fully agree. I honestly do. Like, I still hold that I really like Overture, but Black Plague is better.
Yeah.
So before we move on to spoiler stuff, we actually have a non-spoiler question. From Lord Codell Puking the Goombas. He is asking us, it was nice to see an older game like this not be too punishing on the player when they died. Do you think this is a problem for the horror genre, or do you think Penumbra kept the scares coming after the loss?
So, the only times I died playing Penumbra Overture, specifically, were the sort of linear, how fast can you get through this before the thing kills you, sections that come up a couple times. And
it's like 3 of them, yeah.
Those weren't interesting. Like, after you die the first time, then you're like, okay, I get it. Like, I know when the scare's coming. And then they don't really try, like, a new scare after that. And honestly, those just got annoying. I think the horror genre in general really suffers from having failure states and doesn't really know how to handle them. I still think they don't. Like, the best ones are the games where a failure state allows the game to keep moving forward, like in Until Dawn.
What I was gonna... In Amnesia... you don't actually die, you just get put into a different part of the map. And I think that is super fucking cool.
Yeah, it's a lot smarter than respawning.
I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like death states, or lost states from death, I agree with you, they ruin it.
Yeah, they cheapen the scare, because if the scare kills you...
You get to see the scare again, and
and then it stops being a scare, and it just starts being a scripted, annoying moment, which, whatever.
Yep. They exist. So, yeah, I don't know if that's an answer, but that's the answer we got.
Yeah, the answer is I don't think it keeps the scares, and I think it's a problem for the horror genre. So, no or, but an and.
Yes, and yes. All right, so we're going to take a little break, and we'll come back and talk about some fucking spoilerinos.
Oh, shit.
Hey, welcome to the break in the middle of the episode. Before we continue, I wanted to give a quick shout out / thank you to our wonderful patrons who help us in the money stuff. It's great. Thanks to David Snotter, Mark B. Riding, Puking Goombas, Steve Z, and Storm Hughes. Your shit helps, and it's great. Thank you so much. If you would like to learn what you can get for being a patron, head on over to patreon.com/IndieBytesYT to learn the deets.
Yeah, give us money and we'll give you something. Find out.
It's mostly Discord stuff and voting on podcast stuff.
Yeah.
You get early episode access too for like the YouTube videos that I definitely do. Oh, wow, Jesse. Hey, wow, we're in the spoiler section now.
We're here. It's the place to be, kids. Welcome. Hope you played the games. If you didn't, we're going to spoil it. Did you know Dumbledore dies at the end of Penumbra Requiem? Oh, I'm so sorry.
No. Actually,
I didn't play it. Don't fucking say nothing.
All right, fucking spoilers for Penumbra Overture. Red is such a good character.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree. I think Red's ending was really interesting. I don't know if I thought Red was all that interesting, and that like the stuff he was saying up until that point was kind of whatever.
I love how he is written. I love his voice.
Yeah.
And it feels like fitting the ending for Red. Yeah. The ending / not ending, depending on how you look at it, actually, and what you see in the later games.
Yeah, I felt like Red was very similar to, obviously, it's impossible that this would have been the case given the release times, but I felt like Red was very similar to Sander Cohen from BioShock, both in his resolution to a story, but also in how he got there and the way that he's written, the very flamboyant sort of Shakespearean writing, which, you know, is built off of in his conclusion and finding that like that was really all he had to read was Shakespeare and Nietzsche and all that. So like, yeah, it was good. I liked the way that his character went. I liked the way it was written, and yeah, I liked his conclusion a lot. I thought it was a really, really smart way to end that game for sure.
You know what's really fucked up about Red? Our good friend Thomas Redwood has been in the mines since he was 14.
Yeah, and he was like 30 when he dies.
He was like 30 something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's some stuff that's revealed in Black Plague. Red's presence carries forward through Black Plague and the DLC Requiem in some very, very cool ways. I like it. I really, really like it.
Yeah, I like that Red was clearly somebody that the institution, or whatever the hell it was called, like knew about. They were aware that he was up there, but they didn't do anything to help him. And that was really, I think, something that they used for a good effect to build that these people didn't really care about anyone else, but also their inability to be concerned for someone else's safety without, with the possibility of undermining their own safety was their undoing. The fact that they didn't have any concern for him resulted in them dying, which was very, very interesting. I think that's like a really good look at that sort of class warfare sort of thing, and that the institutions kind of, you know, the upper class. If you ever seen Snowpiercer, you know, they're at the front of the train, and everyone else is at the back. Red's sitting at the back. He's got no money. He's got no food. He's Chris Evans. And you see what happens when you don't help that sort of thing. When you let the monsters grow in the back of the train, the people you've created as such. Obviously, they weren't killed by any people that were up in the mines, but their experiments and their inability to help someone like Red definitely hurt them, which I thought was an interesting conclusion to the story. I thought that was really cool.
Red's definitely at least as hot as Chris Evans.
Yeah, ooh, because he was burned to death.
He died.
The joke is immolation.
Got it. It's really hard to... There's a lot of stuff about Red that, like I said, bleeds into the other games, and it's really hard to talk as much about him as I want to without spoiling it. So if you don't want spoilers for Black Plague and a little bit for Requiem, skip ahead like 2 minutes. Because here's the thing, Red is actually... So in Black Plague, you learn about this virus that the institution like discovered and infected them. Red was infected with that virus, and that's why he couldn't die. Then Red's virus jumps into your head and is the main antagonist of Black Plague. And I feel like Clarence is a better antagonist, but I'm gonna digress there.
Clarence is at least an antagonist. First one didn't really have one, right? So.
Very true. Clarence is a fantastic antagonist and voice character.
Yeah.
And then Red comes back again in Requiem because you're going crazy as shit. And there's more stuff about the virus, and it's less that the institution wasn't paying attention and more that Red got infected when the outbreak happened, and he was stuck, and that's all there is to it. And I love it. I really, really do love it.
I liked the writing for Clarence a lot. I think he was probably my favorite part of the two games.
Yeah.
And that he's very mocking of the player, but he also takes away a lot of control, which I thought was cool. There's a lot of scripted moments where it fucks with you, you know, in really funny ways. He forces your vision to change at points. There's one point later on where he does that sort of like, oh, the thing is gone, and then you go check somewhere else, like, oh no, it was back there. It's like, I brought it back. Everything you see is because of me, you bitch. Like, I thought that was really cool. Like, I really like that sort of thing in games. I like when they do that.
I really love about Clarence how he starts off saying, "Ah, yes, let us die! Ha ha ha! Free me!" And then at the end, he's like, no, don't hate, no, don't.
Yeah,
don't
as things progress,
bud.
he starts having some degree of self-preservation, which was really, really a stark contrast. Yeah.
Anyways, unspoilers for those two games, I guess. I don't know, man. It's so you mentioned that there was a single part in Overture that actually scared you. What was it?
The first time the big scary worm shows up, that was it. Like, it banged on the door, and up until that point, things banged on the door, and I was like, it's probably just a dog. Like, whatever.
It's just a dog.
What's
And
a
then
dog
it fucking goes through!
And then it's a big boy, and him coming.
Big
oh,
boy.
Lord, he coming. And
He gonna get you.
You know, the first time that happened, I was like, that's spooky. I gotta run away. That's spooky as fuck. But then, you know, I died, and I was like, oh, okay.
Oh,
This is just really annoying now.
This is just a running sequence.
Yeah, I just want to go.
I'm starting to agree with you, honestly. Like, there's a lot of things that cheapen the experience of Penumbra Overture, and they like 100% learned from it when they went into Black Plague, because the difference is worlds apart. I feel
like the scary moments in Black Plague stick out more to me as more obviously scripted moments, but
more
the
interesting.
moments themselves, were less scripted in why they were scary. Like, the first time the worm appears, that's fully scripted. The camera turns, you're looking at the door, you're seeing it bang, and then the thing fucking comes out. You're looking at it or you're not, and your only choice is to run away.
It's actually the second time the worm appears.
Well, the first time that it's like a big threat to you, I feel like.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Where, like, it's not something you just see and you're like, oh, that's crazy. It's like an actual thing you need to be concerned about. I feel like. I don't remember necessarily, but obviously the first one didn't stick out to me as much, so it probably wasn't that scary. But with Black Plague, the first time that a threat appears, it's scripted the moment that it shows up, but the way that it can get to you is less so. It has more of an AI, and it's less like, I'm just charging towards a point, which is fine. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but when you're playing Black Plague and you're trying to dodge from whatever the infected things are called, I don't remember what they're called.
Turn God.
Turn Gate or God or whatever, yeah. When they show up and you're trying to run away from them or you're trying to like hide from them, that was like really good. That was legitimately scary the first time that thing showed up. First off, visually, significantly scarier than zombie dogs and big black worm. Like, to a whole nother level.
The Turn God are super, super fucking cool.
Yeah.
I like them for a lot of reasons. The least of which is their weird belly penis.
I loved that. That was truly the scariest part. That gave me like weird Outlast vibes. Obviously, Outlast is more scary penis men than it is scary belly button like wires. But it was still very, like, I had the same feeling playing that, which I thought
think
was
it's
really
supposed
cool.
to be like an umbilical cord, but the weird part about it is that it loops around to their back.
Yeah, which, you know, that's disgusting.
What the fuck?
And they've got like big fly eyes. Like, I don't know what's going on. I hated all of it.
They're so fucking cool though.
They're so creepy looking. What a weird, like, the fact that someone sat down and they were like, this is it. This is the scary thing for the game. You're a monster. You're a bastard and I hate you.
How many renditions do you think they went through on the belly penis tube?
They probably had like 40 drawings trying to figure out how far up the back it should go. They're like, should that go to his neck? They're like, no, that's too far.
Oh, God, that'd be so bad.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. I think you got it again. Like, they're good, and the freedom that you have in how you engage with or flee from them is very good.
Yeah.
There's also some moments later on in the game where you are forced into like a direct confrontation with one. There's a couple
that
moments.
moment's really cool. I like the way that that's handled, in that it plays with the bit of Clarence sort of screwing with your vision and making you see what he wants you to see, but also that it's probably the most like normal version of that threat, in that it's not, it doesn't have a flashlight, it's not really aggressive, it's just moving towards you, and you're in a confined space, and so your ability to stop it is
You're in a confined
different.
space with things you need to do.
Yeah.
You are locked in a room with a monster, and your progression is in that room. It's so good.
It's not a chase so much as it's like just
It's
a
cat and
pressure
mouse.
moment. Yeah, very cat and mouse. You got to like drag him over here and then run and then do the thing and then wait for him to come to you again. And it is a bit drawn out, in my opinion. It takes a little bit too long, but it's still a really good moment. It's the only time you actually get to take one of those things down, and it's arguably the last one you would want to take down. And by arguably, I mean it is the last one you'd want to take down.
Well, there's two moments like that.
Well, so the one with the crane is I think the bigger point, of being like the only one that's the only one that you take down, though, isn't
I'm
it?
talking about. Oh, that's not what I was talking about at
Oh, what
all.
were
So
you
there's
talking
three
about?
moments. I'm talking about the computer room.
Computer room.
You lock one in a freezer.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, that's a little different because you don't actually kill that thing. It's just kind of stuck in
Yeah,
there.
I wasn't talking about killing. I was talking about
Right.
nullifying or avoiding.
Yeah.
Um,
With that one,
that's-
though,
that
the only
one's
puzzle
really
you have to
good.
solve there is dragging it into the room. And that's why I
Yeah.
didn't find that one all that interesting. Where the one with the doctor, I think, is the one that's more interesting, just because, like, your
Yes.
only solution for that puzzle is to kill it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's all you're doing in there.
fucking Clarence.
Yeah.
Man, I think that the freezer one is one of those that would be more interesting if you were someone who is unfamiliar with game logic.
Definitely, yeah. Definitely.
And then there's the actual Clarence encounter, which is fucking nothing. It's so easy.
It's a joke.
I feel like Black Plague had better set pieces and
Yeah.
better flow overall.
Yeah.
Like it really is a night and day difference.
Yeah, seriously.
Do you think that people would need to play Overture before Black Plague? I feel like Black Plague does a decent enough job of catching you up.
Yeah,
with
the
what's
setup
going
for
on.
Black Plague, like, okay, the entirety of Overture is the setup for Black Plague, but the setup is, like, really not all that necessary, in my opinion, like, narratively. You don't need to play Overture to understand what's going on in Black Plague. It's an underground facility run by maybe the Russians, that's really big, and that they were doing tests on, like, some alien thing, maybe.
It's not the Russians.
I know, but you see one of those bunkers, it's in the snow, you're like, it's the Russians. That's where your brain goes. That's what I'm saying at the start anyways. If you haven't played Overture, I think that's where a lot of people would go right away,
Yeah,
other than the English recordings and writing. But, fucking,
whatever.
who knows Russian? Not even Russian people
Nobody.
know Russian. Come on.
Oof.
The interesting point, though, I think, for that, deciding between playing Overture first or not, is that playing Overture, like we were talking about earlier, really builds up your ability to understand how the game is meant to be played. Like, had I not played Overture before playing Black Plague, I would have had a much harder time playing Black Plague, just because I didn't know what they wanted from me in terms of solving puzzles. So, do I think you need to play Overture first? No, for the story, but yes, if you haven't played a lot of horror games, or if you haven't played a lot of frictional specific games, because their form of interaction is very unique, and you need to know how to use that properly before you can solve a lot of the puzzles, and I think get the most out of the games.
I would say that the only thing from Overture that really improves the experience of Black Plague and Requiem would be knowing Red.
Yeah,
I think that's the only key aspect of Overture that really you benefit from.
right. And having not played Requiem, I can't necessarily agree. I don't think you need it for Black Plague so much. There is, like, mentions of him.
There's nods to it that I think get a lot more impactful, but again, that's personal. That's probably just for me because of how much I like Red.
Right.
What was your least favorite moment of Overture?
A lot of them. No, that's not true.
I can tell you mine definitively.
Yeah, what's yours? Let's hear it.
The ice cave.
The ice cave. Is that the one where there's
You
like
have
a
to
broken...
go across a frozen lake to get
Right.
a crowbar from a dude.
So how did you do that? I'm curious.
There are two ways that you can do it. The way that I did it was I would just take a couple steps forward until the ice broke, and then once the ice stopped bouncing, walk across it.
Right.
That's how I did it, but you can also use the planks to trigger. Like, you can put them ahead of you and tap the ice.
Right.
That's how Jam did it when we first played through. I didn't remember that.
So there's a third way you can do it, which is significantly easier than either of those ways, is hilarious, and is part of why I didn't take Overture all that seriously. After that point, I was like, this game's a meme. that you slap it together with 2 pieces of cardboard. And
okay, what is it? Please tell me.
You fucking just jump. You just jump. If you just jump across the ice, you do not die. You don't even have to break the ice first. Just jump.
I just like sprint and jump.
Just keep fucking jumping, and you will never fall into the water.
Oh, because the ice takes a second.
Exactly. So if you jump,
God damn
you're
it.
okay. You just jump through the whole thing. It's a fucking joke.
I'm furious.
It was, it was pretty bad. It was rough. That wasn't my least favorite part because obviously I didn't have any problems with it.
Can I take a guess at what your least favorite part was?
Yes, you can.
The long spider tunnel.
No, I didn't find any of those too frustrating. There's no particular part I could point at of Overture I think that is like particularly bad. I kind of just think it had this overall feeling of lack of polish. Lack of like...
Oh, for sure.
Particular, and it's their first game. You can't be like, wow, your first game fucking sucks. What the fuck? But I could still be like, I didn't think it was all that impressive. Obviously, again, playing out of the time that it came out, there's a lot of stuff that I missed. A lot of the context is missing for me, but I just didn't find a lot of it to be all that enjoyable. The worst moment, probably still the worm chase, just because like it was boring and not fun.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a particularly challenging part. It was just like, okay,
another
here's
one
another
of those
thing.
things,
Break it.
like it's another one of those things that because of the game's age and because of our familiarity with the genre and games in general was just not as impactful.
Yeah, definitely. I bet that moment would have been great if I had never done a chase sequence before in a game, or if I had never done that kind of a chase sequence where it's not so much just running through an area, it's also solving a puzzle and trying to get through it in the fastest way possible.
I think it does gain something from the interaction method.
Yeah.
I think it gains some tension from that, but overall, yeah, it kind of falls flat.
Yeah.
The dogs, by the way, the jank method for the dogs is you jump up on a crate.
Oh.
You jump up on a crate and then smack them as they jump at you. You can hit them with the rock or with the weapon.
So you like completely incapacitate them after that, yeah?
You can kill them. You can completely kill the dogs.
That's what I did for every single one. You don't have to get up on a crate. You can just hit them.
Oh, I know you can.
If you time the hits properly, they'll never run away.
Mm-hmm.
So
you can get them right as they stand up.
Not even right as they stand up, because if you hit them as they stand up, like if you don't time it properly, they will not be stunned and just run away, and then you're fucked. But yeah, if you know the timing, you don't have to do anything. You just walk up, sneak, get them like 5-6 times, and you're good to go. It was a joke.
Same for the
just
spiders.
Wasting my goddamn time. Yeah, same with the spiders. Just a waste of time.
And I feel like they...
I just figured it out. Sorry. The worst part is the spider chase sequence, the long tunnel. You're right.
That's the one that
And I thought it wasn't.
Sucks.
But I thought about it, and then I remember the spiders crawling through the fucking rock that I had up like 5 times. And I was like, this is horseshit.
You have to... you got to be quick. Otherwise, you're fucked. Yep. You have anything else you want to talk about, or you want to cover some questions? Because we got 3 more.
I think
we
that's
said
mostly
a lot.
it. I mean, so like, yeah, spoiler wise, the game doesn't have like a super broad narrative.
It's mostly moments.
Mostly that the notes tell a lot of interesting background stuff, and I like that there's a lot of discussion of like colonialism.
Yes,
very
I
briefly,
really enjoy that.
And the way that the Inuit, I think it was, or the Inukshuk people, were affected by the encroachment of the group. And the way that they sort of desecrated their lands to get access to the Turngate stuff and all that I thought was really interesting.
I wish that had been more of a theme.
Yeah,
but it's
the way that it's presented. I think is probably more than they had to do. So I appreciate it nonetheless. But
I like that it is there. It is a good little bit. Definitely. And that's another classic horror thing. People who want money dig where they shouldn't.
Yeah.
People who want money or knowledge dig where they shouldn't and disturb ancient things and get their comeuppance.
Yeah, greedy colonialist bastards get owned online, real, not fake.
Truth. Gone viral.
Yeah.
So, we got 2 more questions from Cody. First one is, how terrified were you at that first puzzle room where you lift the rocks from the big-ass crate and just go under the floorboards? Cody says he just noped the fuck out of there. when you can't actually get hurt in that room.
Yeah.
You cannot actually die in there. There's one spider that runs across, and I think that's probably that might be the best actual horror place in there, because you don't have a weapon yet when you go in there.
Yeah.
And they run a big ass spider across the screen. I think it's a good moment that's sold very well, and is spooky.
Yeah, kind of.
But when you know how the game works, there's nothing.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about that one.
Yeah, no,
I did nope the fuck out though. I didn't enjoy that section. The next he says, I really, really loved how old and jank everything was. It was pretty nostalgic feeling, to be honest. Are there any games of Penumbra's magnitude that evoke the same emotion to you all? As in an old jank game that you just continue to play regardless of its flaws. P.S. Those low poly ass wolves in the beginning were a dumb little jank treat for me. I'll let you go first on this one. Do you have any like old games that have not aged well that you really enjoy just going back to?
That's a good question. I don't know if there's a ton of games, or even like a game that sticks out to me as being particularly janky and old. Because I mean, I got into games around, like seriously got into games around, BioShock, around 2007. So
when jank kind of stopped.
Yeah, when jank kind of became the thing that was kind of exclusive to indie, and almost an intentional aspect of it. Yeah, I can't really think of anything that I'm like nostalgic for because of the jank. So unfortunately, I don't think I have a good answer for that one.
I do. Giants Citizen Kabuto. That game fucking sucks.
I've never even heard of it. So yeah, it must be pretty bad.
It's a weird old ass third person shooter. It doesn't feel good to play. It has amazing ideas, hilarious writing, but that game is not good, but I love it. That's my answer. Giants is a very fucking British comedy game.
Right.
If like Monty Python style. Jared asks us, playing Penumbra after Amnesia, it dawned on me that both games have a point-and-click adventure game influence, both through the use of the inventory as well as the structure of problems that are presented to the player. Do you agree? And if so, why do you think that influence might be present?
Yeah, huge agree.
Absolutely. I think it's pretty much undeniable.
Pretty obviously, yeah. There are points where, especially in Overture, where I was like, that's fucking stupid. But then I was like, no, that's the same shit I would have had to do in fucking Grim Fandango, This is a point-and-click adventure game in the truest sense.
Use hammer on can.
Yeah, like you do. Normal stuff like that. Yeah, it was...
Jared actually asked me. He told me that he was at that moment, and I was like, oh, let me know if you need help. he asked me what the solution was. So, it's bad.
Yeah, not great. Yeah, I mean, that stuff I think is... it's just
comes with the territory.
Yeah, it just kind of makes sense. I think that's a good way of presenting a horror game with puzzles that asks a different question of the player, instead of like, how quickly can you get through this section before the scary thing reaches you, which is what a lot of horror games do, and instead presents you with like a how quickly can you solve this sort of nonsensical logical puzzle before the horror thing gets to you. Or not even the horror thing gets to you, especially in Overture. There's not really anything chasing you in a lot of the puzzle sections. It's just, a decent enough puzzle between maybe a scary point.
It's definitely more of a puzzle game than a horror game.
Definitely. Absolutely. No question. Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't know if there's a good answer for why the influence is present, at least for me, but I definitely agree. Like, I think it just makes sense.
It fits.
Yeah, it makes sense and it fits. Yeah, I would imagine it's just because that's what the developers liked playing, and they wanted to play a scary version of that, and there aren't a lot of scary point-and-click adventure games. So I think, that's probably where they came from with that, and it makes a lot of sense.
Boom, boom, there you go. Question answered for Jared, King of Unions. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for joining us for this month's episode of Byte Club. The vote for November's game is actually tied right now yet again between A Short Hike and Blasphemous. So just like last episode, I'm going to roll a 20-sided die to decide what the hell's going on. Evens, and we'll do A Short Hike. Odds, and we'll do Blasphemous. That's a 19. We get to play Blasphemous.
Oh.
Boy.
Oh.
So here's the copy about Blasphemous to let you know about it. Explore this nightmarish world of twisted religion and discover its many secrets hidden deep inside. Use devastating combos and brutal executions to smite the hordes of grotesque monsters and titanic bosses, all ready to rip you limb from limb. Locate and equip relics, rosary beads, and prayers that call on the powers of the heavens to aid you in your quest to break your eternal damnation. This is like a Dark Souls-y, hacky-slashy, grotesque-ass adventure game.
Ass, pixel art ass, game ass. Yeah.
Looks fucking gorgeous.
Yeah, it's great. I played the demo already, so I'm excited to play more of it for sure.
If you'd like to vote for December's game, head on over to patreon.com/IndieBytesYT to learn more. The choices for I Wrote November, It's December's games are Outer Wilds, Felix the Reaper, and The Haunted Island, a frog detective game. I'm jazzed about all of those. Yeah. This is the second time Outer Wilds has been on the vote list, and I'm not
Guys,
ashamed
we're not trying to
it.
say anything, but pick Outer Wilds, you know? That's all we're trying to say.
I need an excuse to make the time to play that game.
Also, just to be clear, sorry, Outer Wilds, not Outer Worlds. Those are different games.
Wilds is the older-ish one.
Older within the year, yeah.
Outer Wilds is the one that isn't Fallout.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. As always, we'll be taking your questions about next month's games and chatting about them here on the podcast, so send them in as you come up with them or when I yell on Twitter for questions. As always, you can email them to nevin@indie-bytes.com. You can use a contact form on the Indie Bytes website, or you can yell at me on Twitter. You can find Jesse on Twitter at Gracia. You can find a whole bunch of indie game-related content on Twitter at IndieBytesYT, on YouTube as IndieBytes, and at indie-bytes.com. This episode's music is from the Penumbra soundtrack by Miko Tarmia, and you can find it on his Bandcamp, which is linked in the episode notes. Thanks again for listening. Looking forward to getting your questions and talking about Blasphemous. See you next month.
Yeah, boy.